Garutara Maha Sangaratneng Avasarai Ayubowan Adape Visiveni Daham Sisila Vadsalhanata Ekamutuana Kavurut Bohom Sadrin Piligano other Apidanova Migramaha Sankyava Hambuenova, a cake and not Kratolling, a Homasaving Balangin of Paper Sanat Sahabagi win. Habai Visesatya Tiene other Mata Aranchi, Gatma Innoa, Ape Taruna Udavia, Tarun Lamai, Mihi Ipadichage, Eminsa Mampodak. එයාට මේක පැහැදිලි කරලා දෙන්නම් ඉංග්‍රීසියෙන් අපේ ස්වාමීන් වහන්සේලාව අඳුන්වලා දෙන්නම්. Welcome to everybody, particularly all those young people who are joining us today. As I've been saying, we are very blessed today to benefit from the presence and the combined wisdom of three very eminent monks. I would like to very briefly introduce them to you. And in the sort of order of appearance, the way they're going to speak to you, we will first, of course, have our Bhante Samitha, who is the head of our Milton Keynes Vihara, introduce the program. We will have a very eminent, very knowledgeable Panditha Hamduru, who is from Mathura area in Sri Lanka, Mathura Dickwelle, and he's the head of the Dickwelle Veuru Kandala Rajamaha Viharaya. That's the well-known ancient temple, and he is the head there. And his name is Venerable Dickwelle Seelasumana. And he has, of course, been the mainstay, the main presenter of our program for 4 months, 4.5, or maybe even 5 months now. His stay is actually coming to an end, so I would request anybody who is wanting to sponsor next week's program and any thereafter, please get in touch. And our next most eminent guest is Reverend Dr. Sir Sumanasiri of Singapore and Malaysia. And he is in fact an internationally traveled and a monk who's working everywhere. And the Sir part actually has been is a distinction presented on him by the Malaysian government. And he has traveled, as I said, to different countries and in countries where you would never expect the Buddhist teaching to be taught, such as Pakistan. He's been the very first Buddhist monk to be invited by the government. And of course, finally, Reverend Akurala Samitha Bhante has been, is the center of our Vihara and who's the head of our Vihara. So this is mainly for the benefit of anyone who's not joined us before. So all I've got to say is that please enjoy the program, and around 6:30 we will have an initial Sinhalese talk, relatively short, but then the English version. And then around 6:30, please ask any questions, anything at all. Most young people I know would not take things for granted, and you will have your own queries. So please do not hesitate. Even the simplest thing, please put it forward through the chat or ask directly through the microphone if you speak to us. So without taking any further time, I will respectfully invite Bhante Akurala Samitha to start the proceedings. Good evening, everyone. Namo Buddhaya to all. Warm welcome to the 20th Daham Sisila program.
that is dedicated to explore some important topics of Buddhism and to enhance the spiritual practice in everyone's lives. Also to share the blessings at this very difficult time while most of us are being housebound, and extending our spiritual practice to the households through online program. As usual, we are very grateful to our devotees for sponsoring these programs to make these available continuously. Also, we are very grateful to the eminent, very educated Buddhist monks who are very senior and also has researched in many areas. So it is a great blessing. Those very senior Buddhist monks are staying at the temple these days. I welcome our most venerable Dickwelle Seelasumana Panditha, who has been staying last 6 months in the temple, supporting our community while even I was in Sri Lanka. He is going back to Sri Lanka at the end of this month. So we are very grateful for his contribution, especially in this Daham Sisila program. So perhaps we need to come together and to be grateful for his contributions. We have a special program in the few weeks to come to say our gratitude to our Venerable Hamdu. And also together with us, our Venerable Dr. Sumanasiri Hamdu staying with us. He is a very eminent Buddhist monk, so we are very grateful for his contributions as well. So today we are very grateful to the sponsor family, Dr. Ruvini Senasinghe, Dr. Namal Senasinghe, and their children and the family. So they wanted to dedicate these special merits to their beloved fathers, late Justice Mr. Dhira Ratna, who passed away 3 years ago. As the daughter, Dr. Rumi Senasinghe usually goes to Sri Lanka and do a lot of dana activities and charitable activities in his good name. But due to these difficult situations in traveling, and she could not have done the same thing, but Dhamma Dana is the highest dana. If we can share the teachings of the Buddha, is the highest giving. And may those greatest blessings and merits be with him. And those be a great blessing for him to find every peace and liberation. Also to Mr. Stanley Senasinghe, who passed away 4 years ago, and all other relatives, teachers, and all the departed friends. They would like to share these merits. They also want to bring the blessings to all the healthcare workers who sacrifice their lives during COVID-19 and this very difficult time. And they wish all the peace and happiness for them all. Share the merits with them all. May those blessings be with them for the protection and happiness. So today we have chosen another very important, very useful, very meaningful Dhamma title to discuss. Further discussions will be after the talk. So now I welcome our Hamdros and invite our Venerable Seelasumana to start the program. Thank you very much.
පන්සිල් සමාදන් වීම සඳහා නමස්කාරය කියන්න.
නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු වරහතු සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස. නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු වරහතු සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස. නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු වරහතු සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස.
බුද්ධං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
Buddham saranam gacchami.
ධම්මං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
සංඝං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
Sangham saranam gacchami.
ဒုတိယံ පි බුද්ධං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
Dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
ဒုတိယံ පි ධම්මං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
ဒုတိယံ පි සංඝං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
තතියම්පි බුද්ධං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
තතියම්පි ධම්මං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
තතියම්පි සංඝං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
පානාති පාතා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
Panatipata vedmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
අදින්නාදාන වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
Innadana vedmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
කාමේසු මිච්ඡාචාරා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
Kame sumichachara vedmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
මුසාවාදා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
Musavada vedmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
සුරාමේරය මජ්ජපමා දට්ඨානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
Suramire majjapamadatthana vedmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස ලාභෝ අලාභෝ අයසෝ යසෝච නින්දාපසංසාච සුඛංච දුක්ඛං ඒතේ අනිච්චා මනුජේසු ධම්මා අසස්සතා විපරිණාම ධම්මාති ගෞරවනීය ආම්දුරන් මහත්තයලාගෙන් අවසරයි පින්නතුනි දහම් සිසිල වැඩසටහන යටතේ අද අප සාකච්ඡා කිරීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වන මාතෘකාව ඒ අටලෝ දහමින් කම්පා නොවීම කියන මාතෘකාවයි. ඒ මාතෘකා කළ ගාථා ධර්මයේ ඒ කරුණ වට සඳහන් වෙන්නේ අංගුත්තර නිකායේ අට්ඨක නිපාතේ සඳහන් වන ගාථා ධර්මයක් මා සඳහන් කළේ මේ ලෝකයේ උපන් සෑම මිනිසෙකුටම අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මුහුණ දෙන්නට සිදුවන ධර්මතා 8ක් ඒ බුදුදහමේ දක්වලා තියෙනවා. ඒවට තමයි අෂ්ටලෝක ධර්මයේ නැත්නම් අටලෝ දහම කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒ වගේම එම ධර්මතාවලට කියනවා ලෝක ධර්ම නැත්නම් මනුෂ්‍ය ධර්ම කියලා. ලාභ අලාභ යස අයස නිന്ദා ප්‍රශංසා සැප දුක් කියන මෙන්න මේ කියන කරුණු 8 තමයි අටලෝ දහම ඇටියට සැලකෙන්නේ. ඒ කරුණු 8 ධනාත්මක කරුණු 4ක් තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ඍණාත්මක කරුණු 4ක් තියෙනවා. දෙපැත්තක් තියෙනවා. අන්නේ ධර්මයන්ගේ ස්වභාවය තමයි නිට්ටය නොවීම නැත්නම් ස්ථිර නොවීම, විපරිණාමයට පත්වීම නැත්නම් වෙනස් වීමේ ස්වභාවයට පත්වීම තමයි ඒ ධර්මතාවල දකින්න පුළුවන් ලක්ෂණය. මංගල සූත්‍රයේදී අපි අහලා තියෙනවා කවුරුත් පුට්ටස්ස ලෝක ධම්මේහි චිත්තං යස්සන කම්පති කියලා. මෙන්න මේ කියන ලෝක ධර්මතාවයන් ඉදිරියේ සිත කම්පා නොකර ගැනීම, ඒ වගේම ශෝක රහිත වීම උතුම් මංගල කාරණයක් ඇටියට එම සූත්‍ර දේශනාවේ සඳහන් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා අපට අපේ ජීවිතය පිළිබඳ අවබෝධයක්, යථාර්ථය පිළිබඳ වැටහීමක් අපට ඇති කරගන්නට නම් මෙන්න මේ ධර්මතාවයන් පිළිබඳ හරි වැටහීමක්, හරි අවබෝධයක් අපි ඇති කරගන්නට ඕන. ඕනෑම අවස්ථාවක අපි අසහනයටපත් නොවි, පීඩාවට, ශෝකයටපත් නොවි, ඒ වගේම අපහසුතාවයටපත් නොවි අපේ ජීවිතය ඕනෑම දුකක්, ඕනෑම සැපක් විඳ දරා ගන්න පුළුවන් නම් අන්න එතකොට තමයි අපට නියමාකාරයෙන් අපේ ජීවිතය ගත කරන්න පුළුවන්කම ලැබෙන්නේ. අන්න එවැනි ජීවිතයක් Tamanට බරකුත් නැහැ, ඒ වගේම අනුන්ට බරකුත් නැහැ. ඕනෑම වෙලාවක අභියෝගවලට මුහුණ දීමේ ශක්තියක් අපට ඇති කර ගන්න පුළුවන්. අන්නේ අභියෝගවලට මුහුණ දෙන්න බැරි කුජලයා තමයි කම්පාවට, වේදනාවට පත් වෙන්නේ. ඒ නිසා මේ ධර්මතාවලින් අපේ ජීවිතයට යහපත් පැත්ත වගේම අපේ ජීවිතයේ හොඳ පැත්ත ගැනත් අපට කල්පනා කරන්න කරුණු දෙපැත්තක් තියෙනවා. අපේ හිත කැළඹුණු සිතකින් යුක්තව නැත්නම් අපි නිරන්තරයෙන්ම ප්‍රශ්න ගැන හිතලා අපේ හිත කලබල කරගත්තොත් අපට කළ යුතු දේවල් මොනවද, නොකළ යුතු දේවල් මොනවද කියලා හිතා ගන්න බැරි වෙනවා. මේ ලෝකයේ ස්වභාවය තමයි ලාභයක් ලැබුණට පස්සේ උඩඟු වීම. ලාභේන උන්නතෝ ලෝකෝ අලාභේන චෝනතෝ. ලාභයක් ලැබුණම උඩඟු වෙනවා, අලාභයක් ලැබුණම කම්පාවටපත් වෙනවා. ඒ වගේ මේ අෂ්ටලෝක ධර්මයේ සඳහන් වෙනවා යස අයස කියලා දෙකක්. යසස කියලා කියන්නේ පිරිස් ඇති බව. අයස කියලා කියන්නේ පිරිස් නැතිවීම නැත්නම් තනිවීම කියන එක. ඒතර දෙපැත්තක් තියෙනවා. ඒක මේ ලෝකයේ ඉන්න ගිහි පැවිදි කියලා ભેදයක් නැහැ. ස්ත්‍රී පුරුෂ කියලා ભેදයක් නැහැ. සෑම කෙනාටම එක තත්වයකින් සිටින්නට හැකියාවක් නැහැ. ලාභ අලාභ සියල්ලම වරින් වර අපි හැමදෙනාටම පැමිණෙනවා. මේ ලෝකේ ලාභ විතරක් ලැබෙන පුජ්‍යලෝ නැහැ. ඒ වගේම අලාභ විතරක් ලැබෙන පුජ්‍යලෝත් නැහැ. එකිනෙකාට එක එක ආකාරයෙන් මේවා වරින් වර පැමිණෙන මේ දෙපැත්තම. ඒ නිසා මේ ලෝක ධර්මතාවයන් ඉදිරියේදී වෙනසකට පැමිණෙන්නේ නැතුව සිටිය හැකිනම් අන්නේ ගුණය හඳුන්වන්නේ තාදී ගුණය කියලා. ඒක උසස් ආර්ය ගුණයක් ඇටියට අපේ බණ පොතේ සඳහන් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ ගුණය සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම පිළිట్లా තියෙන්නේ බුදුවරුන්ට, ඒ වගේම රහතන් වහන්සේලාට. ඒ බුදුදහමට අනුව අපට ගැඹුරින් විමසා බලන විට මෙන්න මේ සියලුම කරුණ වලට හේතු වෙන්නේ අපේ හිතේ సంతානය නැත්නම් හිතේ ඇතිවෙන ක්‍රියාවලිය. සිත මුල් කරගෙන තමයි මේ හැම දෙයක්ම සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ. බුදුදහමේ ගැන මේ ලෝකය ගැන සඳහන් කරලා තියෙන්නේ ලුජ්ජති පලුජ්ජති इति ලෝකෝ කියලා. කැඩෙන බිඳෙන ලෝකයක්. ඒතර මේ කැඩෙන බිඳෙන ලෝකයේ අනිත්‍ය ස්වභාවය හැර නිට්ටය කිසිවක් නැහැ මේ ලෝකෙ. ස්ථිර වශයෙන් නිට්ටය වශයෙන් ගත හැකි දෙයක් නැහැ. සියල්ලම විනාශකට භාජනය වෙනවා. මොහොතින් මොහොත මේ වෙනස් වීමේ ස්වභාවය අපිට හැම දෙයකම ජීව අජීව නැත්නම් සප්‍රාණික අප්‍රාණික මේ සියලුම දේවල් වල මේ වෙනස් වීමේ ස්වභාවය අපට දකින්න පුළුවන්. ඒතර මේ సంతානේ නැත්නම් මේ හිතේ ඇතිවෙන අරමුණු වල ස්වභාවය විවිධාකාරයි. අපි එකවර එක අපිට සුභ අරමුණු ඇති වෙනවා. තවත් වරක අපි අසුභ අරමුණු පිළිගැනීමට සිදු වෙනවා. සුභ අසුභ වශයෙන් අපිට මොහොතින් මොහොත අපේ හිතේ ඇති වෙන මේ අරමුණු වෙනස් වෙනවා. අංගුත්තර නිකායේ පඨම ලෝක ධම්ම සූත්‍රයේ, ඒ වගේම ဒုတိ ය ලෝක ධර්ම සූත්‍රයේ ස්ථිර නොවු නිරන්තරයෙන්ම විපරිණාමයටපත් වෙන නැත්නම් මේ වෙනස් වෙන සත්වයන් කෙරෙහි බලපවත්වන මේ කරුණු අට තමයි අටලෝ දහම හැටියට එම සූත්‍ර දේශනාවන් වල දක්වලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ නිසා අපට ජීවිතය නිවැරදිව කළමනාකරණය කරගන්නට නම් අපි සියලු දෙනාටම ඖෂධයක් හැටියට මේ අටලෝ දහම අපේ ජීවිතයට යහපත් පාඩමක් උගන්වනවා. මේක දැනගන්න පුජ්‍යලයා නැත්නම් සීනුවණින් කල්පනා කරන පඬිත පුජ්‍යලයා මේ විපරිණාමයටපත් වෙන නැත්නම් මේ වෙනස් වෙන අෂ්ටලෝක ධර්මයේ පිළිබඳ නුවණින් අවබෝධ කරගෙන ඒකෙන් කම්පාවටපත් වෙන්නේ නැතුව හැම දෙයකටම යහපත් ආකාරයෙන් මුහුණ දෙන බව ඒ ဒုတိ ය ලෝක ධර්ම සූත්‍රයේ සඳහන් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒතර මේ සූත්‍ර දෙකේම විස්තර කරලා තියෙන්නේ අෂ්ට ලෝක ධර්මයට පුජ්‍යලයා මුහුණ දිය යුතු ආකාරය පිළිබඳව. ඒතර එවැනි පුජ්‍යලයකට අපි අවසාන වශයෙන් බලාපොරොත්තු වන මේ කෙලෙස් ප්‍රහාණය කළා ශෝක රහිතව නිර්වාණය කරා පැමිණීමට පුළුවන්කම ලැබෙනවා. අෂ්ටලෝක ධර්මයෙන් කම්පා නොවීමට නම් අපි මානසික ස්ථාවරත්වයක් අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. අපේ හිතේ අප තුළ මානසික ස්ථාවරත්වයක් අපි ගොඩනගා ගන්නට ඕන. අන්නේ සඳහා අපට බෞද්ධ භාවනාව කියන එක මනා මාර්ගෝපදේශයක් සපයනවා. මේ ලෝකයේ ස්වභාවය තමයි මේ ලෝකේ ජීවත් වෙන හැම දිනාගේම ස්වභාවය තමයි සුඛකාමෝ සැපයට කැමැති. දුක්ඛ පටික්කුලෝ දුකට අකමැති. ජීවිතුකාමෝ ජීවත් වෙන්න කැමැති. අමරණිතුකාමෝ මැරෙන්නට අකමැති. මෙන්න මේක තමයි මේ ලෝක ස්වභාවය. ලෝකයා සැප පැත්තට කැමැති, දුක පැත්තට අකමැති. ඒ නිසා තමයි බුදුහාමුදුරු දේශනා කළේ ඒතේ අනිච්චා මනුජේසු ධම්මා. මේක අනිත්‍යතා ධර්ම හැටියට මේ සියල්ලම වෙනස් වෙන සුළු ධර්ම හැටියටයි බුදුහාමුදුරු දේශනා කළේ. මේ අෂ්ටලෝක ධර්මයක් මේ අනිත්‍යතා ධර්මයට යටත් වෙනවා. ඒතර මේ සැප අපි මේ ලෝක වශයෙන් සැප නොඑක ආකාරයෙන් වින්දනය කරනවා. මේ සැප කියන දේවල් එකාකාරව හැමදාම එකාකාරව පවතින්නේ. ඒ සැප කියන එක දුක වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම දුක කියන එකත් හැමදාම පවතින්නේ. ඒක සැප බවට පත් වෙනවා. ඒතර මේකෙන් පේනවා මේ සියල්ලම අනිත්‍යයි කියන එක. මේවා අතර එකිනෙකට සම්බන්ධතාවයක් තියෙනවා. අන්තර් සම්බන්ධතාවයක්. මේවා නිරන්තරයෙන්ම පරිවර්තනයටපත් වෙනවා. මෙන්න මේ පරිවර්තනය තුළ මේකට මුහුණ දෙන්න අපිට හැම අවස්ථාවකම අපේ මනස නිශ්චලව තබා ගත්තොත් අපට පුළුවන්කම ලැබෙනවා ඒවට යහපත් ආකාරයෙන් මුහුණ දීමේ හැකියාවක් ගොඩනගා ගන්නට පුළුවන්කම ලැබෙනවා. එතකොට මෙන්න මේ කියන ලෝක ධර්මතාවයන් රහත් භාවයට පත් වෙනකොට ඒ රහතන් වහන්සේලාට ඒවාට නියමාකාරයෙන් මුහුණ දීමේ 100% හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා. අකම්පේ ගුණයක් උන්වහන්සේලා තුන ඇති වෙනවා. අකම්පේ කියන්නේ කම්පා නොවීමේ ගුණයක්. ඒතර උන්වහන්සේලාට ඇති වෙන 100% මුහුණ දීමේ හැකියාව සාමාන්‍ය පුජ්‍යලයන් හැටියට අපට 10%ක්වත් දියුණු කරගන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒක අපට මේ ජීවිතය යම් ආකාරයකට යහපත් කරගන්න ඕනෑම දෙයකටම අභියෝගාත්මකව මුහුණ දීමේ ශක්තියක් අපට ඇති කරගන්න පුළුවන්. අපේ බුදුහාමුදුරන් අටලෝ දහමින් කම්පා නොවීමේ ගුණය තමයි අර තාදී ගුණය හැටියට මුලින් දැක්ුවේ. උන්වහන්සේගේ චරිතය තුළින් ඒ අටලෝ දහමින් කම්පා නොවීමේ නොඑක අවස්ථාවන් අපට දැක ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ චරිතය අපේ ජීවිතයට ආදර්ශයක් කොට ගන්න පුළුවන්. අපි එක අවස්ථාවක් ගැන සඳහන් කළොත් අර බේරංජාවේ බමුණා බුදුහාමුදුරන්ට වස් ආරාධනා කළා. නමුත් බුදුහාමුදුරු වැඩිය ඒ වසට ඒ අවස්ථාව වෙනකොට වේරංජා බමුණට ඒ අවස්ථාව අමතක වුණා. වස් ආරාධනය කළ බව අමතක වුණා. නමුත් අපේ බුදුහාමුදුරේ වස් කාලයේ වේරංජාවේ වැඩ හිටියා. උන්වහන්සේ ආහාර වශයෙන් වැළඳුවේ අශ්වයන්ට දෙන යව වළඳමින් තමයි වැඩ හිටියේ. අවසානයේදී ඒ 3 මාසයේ අවසානයේදී අපේ බුදුහාමුදුරුවෝ ඒ වේරංජා බමුණට ප්‍රශංසා කළ ආපසු වැඩිය. ඉතින් මේකෙන් පෙන්වුම් කරන උන්වහන්සේ අටලෝ දහම කෙරෙහි කොයි ආකාරයෙන් මුහුණ දුන්නද කියන එක. ඒ වගේ අපි හැමදෙනාම මේ අෂ්ටලෝක ධර්මයෙන් කම්පා නොවි අපි ඒකට මුහුණ දෙන්නේ කොහොමද කියන එක අපි කල්පනා කරන්නට ඕන. මේ ලෝකේ ඕනෑම දෙයකට දර්ශනයක් තියෙනවා. අපේ ජීවිතය ගැන අපි අවබෝධයක් ඇති කර ගන්නට ඕන. බුදුදහමේ උගන්වන වීරිය කියලා. ඒ දස පාරමිතාවලක් තියෙන වීරිය පාරමිතාව කියලා එක පාරමිතාවක්. ඒ වීරිය ගැන සඳහන් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ විරියේන දුක්ඛං අච්ඡේති කියලා. වීරයෙන් දුක අතහරින්න කියලා. වීරිය ඇති කර ගැනීම තුළින් අපට අපේ දුක නැති කර ගන්නට පුළුවන්. ඉතින් අදහස් කරන්නේ අපි සැලැස්මක් යම්කිසි ක්‍රමයක් යම්කිසි විදියක් ඇති කර ගැනීම. ඒතර ඕනෑම කාර්යයකට ඒ විදිහේ ක්‍රමයක් අපි ඇති කරගත්තොත් අපේ ජීවිතය ඕනෑම ප්‍රශ්නයකට අපට මුහුණ දීමේ හැකියාවක් ශක්තියක් ඇති කරගන්න පුළුවන්. අපේ බුදුහාමුදුරුවෝ දේශනා කරන මේ ලෝකයේ හැම විටම ද්වන්දාත්මකයි කියලා. ද්වන්දාත්මකයි කියන්නේ දෙපැත්තක් තියෙනවා. හොඳ නරක පින්පව් වශයෙන් අපි කල්පනා කරා මේ දෙපැත්තක් තියෙනවා. ඒතර පටිච්ච සමුප්පාදය අනුව අපි කල්පනා කළත් මේ ලෝකේ හැම එකක්ම තවත් එකකට සාපේක්ෂ වශයෙන් සම්බන්ධ වෙනවා. ඒතර මේ ලෝකේ ඇත නැත කියලා අත්ති තංච නත්ති තංච කියලා දෙකක් තිබෙනවා. ධනාත්මක පැත්ත ඍණාත්මක පැත්ත කියලා දෙපැත්තක් තියෙනවා. ඒතර මේ අත්ති කියන එක නැත්නම් ඇත කියන එකත් නත්ති කියන එක නැත කියන එකත් ඒ දෙපැත්තටම අපි ඇලුනත් ඒක ප්‍රශ්නයක් බවට පත් වෙනවා. ඇත කියන පැත්තට ඇලුනත් ප්‍රශ්නයක්, ඒ වගේම නැත කියන පැත්තට ඇලුනත් ප්‍රශ්නයක්. ඒ නිසා ওই දෙකටම යන්නේ නැතුව මැදින් සිටීම තමයි වැදගත් වෙන්නේ. අර බුදුහාමුදුරුවෝ බෝධිසත්ව අවදීදී අත්ත කිලමතානුയോഗය, කාමසුකල්ලිකානුയോഗය කියලා ඒවා අන්ත. ශරීරයට සැපදීමත්, ශරීරයට දුකදීමත් දෙකම අන්ත. ඒතර ඒක පරාභවයට පිරීමට හේතුවක්. ඒ නිසා මෙන්න මේ විදිහේ අවස්ථාවකත් අපි අනුගමනය කරන්න ඕන මැද පිළිවෙත නැත්නම් මධ්‍යම ප්‍රතිපදාව කියන එක. අන්නේ මධ්‍යම ප්‍රතිපදාව අනුගමනය කිරීම තුළින් අපේ ජීවිතයේ යහපත් ආකාරයෙන් අපිට සකසා ගන්නට පුළුවන්කම ලැබෙනවා. ඒතකොට ලාභ අලාභ යස ආයස කියන සියල්ලම අන්ත හැටියට අපිට බුදුදහමට අනුව සලකන්න පුළුවන් වань. ඒ බුදුහාමුදුරු දේශනා කළ තියෙනවා එක්තරා තැනකදී මේ ධර්මයේ ආරග්ගේරීව සාසපෝ කියලා. හරියට ඉදිකටු මුවාතක වගේ නැත්නම් මූණත තිබෙන අබෑටයක් වගේ ඉදිකටු මූණතක තියෙන අබෑටයක් වගේ අපේ ජීවිතය සමතුලිතව පවත්වා ගන්නයි කියලා, සමබරව පවත්වා ගන්නයි කියලා. එක පැත්තකටවත් බර නැතුව අපේ ජීවිතය පවත්වා ගන්නටයි බුදුදහමෙන් උගන්වලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒතෝ එක පැත්තකට හරි බර වුණොත් ඒ ජීවිතය පරාභවයට යනවා, පිරිහීමටපත් වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම තවත් උපමාවක් දක්වලා තියෙනවා පදුමංග තෝයේන අලිම් ප්‍රමාණං කියලා. නෙළුම් කොළේ උඩ තියෙන වතුර බිඳුව වගේ. ඒ නෙළුම් කොළේ තියෙන වතුර බිඳුව ඕනෑම තැනක යනවා, රවුම් ගහනවා, නමුත් ඇලෙන්නේ නැහැ. අන්න ඒ වගේ අපි ඇත කියන පැත්තට හෝ නැත කියන පැත්තට ඇලෙන්නේ නැතුව මේ ජීවිතය ගත කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් අපේ ජීවිතය මනාකොට සකස් කරගන්නට පුළුවන්කම ලැබෙනවා. ඒකට අපිට උපේක්ෂාව කියන එක දක්වලා තියෙන උපේක්ඛා කියලා කියන්නේ හතරවෙනි ධානයේ අවසාන ඵලය. ඒ උපේක්ෂාව නොඑක් ධර්ම කරුණු වල දක්වලා තියෙනවා. උපේක්ෂාව කියලා කියන්නේ මෙදහත් බව නැත්නම් මධ්‍යස්ථතාව. මේ මධ්‍යස්ථතාවය අපි පුරුදු කළ යුතුයි. ඒක තමයි අකම්ප්‍ය ගුණය කියලා කියන්නේ. කම්පා නොවීමේ ගුණය. අන්න එතකොට තමයි ලෝක ධර්මතා ඉදිරියේදී අපට නොසලී කටයුතු කරන්න පුළුවන්කම ලැබෙන්නේ. මේ කරුණ ටිකයි මා කෙටියෙන් මේ හැමදිනාටම සිහිපත් කළේ. ඊළඟට මේ මාතෘකාව යටතේම අපේ හාමුදුරන් වහන්සේලා ඒ අනුශාසනාව සිද්ධ කරાવી. හැමදිනාටම තෙරුවන් සරණයි.
Sisters and brothers in the Dhamma, Today, I've been given the topic to discuss with you the unshaken mind in the 8 vicissitudes of life. This topic is also termed as the 8 vicissitudes of conditions in the world. So therefore, it is also called poetically the 8 vicissitudes of worldly winds. As the wind moves, so these conditions also move. They are not permanent, they are transient, they are temporary. This complex and perplexed world or life is not absolutely rosy. This is very clear to us, especially when we are facing a pandemic which has been disturbing many people in the world. But life is totally not thorny also. Take for instance the rose. The rose is soft, it is beautiful, it is fragrant, but the stem is full of thorns. So what is rosy is rosy, what is thorny is thorny. Because of the rose, you will not meddle with the thorns. On the contrary, you will not neglect the rose just because of the thorns. If you are an optimist who believes that the world is rosy all the time, then it is absolutely not a complete view. And if you are a pessimist, thinking that the world is always thorny, but that is also not correct. But to a realist, from a realist point of view, a Buddhist realist as well, the world or life is abound by beautiful roses and prickly thorns as well. So we have 4 negative and 4 positive conditions here. It is like the pendulum of the clock. A Buddhist realist understands this very clearly because he tries to look at things as they really are. The pendulum of the clock goes from one end to the other and then comes back from that end to the other again. So likewise is life. With these conditions we live, the state of being changeable is well present. Natural change or mutation visible in nature or in human affairs, or by chance, usually beyond one's control. Yet how we choose to respond will result in our happiness or in our suffering. How will you find security in a big storm without being vulnerable or unstable? Find the calm after the storm. First, the philosophy of change. If you understand the teachings of the Buddha, that is the first reality of life, but not as the theory, as an empirical, practical point for realization. So you have 4 negativities and 4 positivities. It is for you to choose. Loss and gain, praise and blame, fame and defame, happiness and suffering. In explaining this 8, I will put fame and defame, praise and blame together because they are quite similar. Let us take each and every point and describe this situation. Loss and gain. We lose many things. Wealth, possessions, we lose in a gambling, we lose in our investments, and when we see that the economics is not gain, we also can lose our economic security. like how it is here in the United Kingdom. We are about 1/4 less of our economy compared to a decade ago. Can you appreciate a gain without wanting to always win? Enjoy your gain without attachment and believing that come what may, after all, everything is not permanent. So the loss you can also transform into a gain. We lose many things, not only money, family members, friends, we lose ourselves also. Not only that businessmen lose in business, all of us are subject to loss and gain. When you are not losing, you are happy when you don't lose, as it helps you, but simply expecting a win-win situation always is not correct. Everything that arises must fall. It is natural. It's the law of nature. And this is also well expressed 2600 years ago by Gautama Buddha, our Lord, our Blessed One. His teachings were not just religious. It was a different way of explaining the laws of nature in a very wisdomized way. If you are conscious and live with that training, then you can be less disappointed, even when there is a crisis, or even when there is a loss. Or you may not be disappointed at all. So such great teachings of great men like the Buddha tells you to face the crisis, manage the crisis, and when you are conscious constantly about it, half of your problem is solved by your own approach. The other part is how you handle the situation by your actions to overcome the bad to good, the loss to profit, the defame to fame, the blame to praise, the suffering to happiness. It looks like life is a gamble. In a war, the real victor is the person or the country that does not get into any kinds of wars. The Buddha says the one who is not interested in loss or gain, he is the victor because he doesn't go into such wars. He is the victor. The others are the vanquished. Because then your only approach is peace, nothing else. Peace is the solution. There is no path to peace. Peace itself is the solution. There is a story, a very interesting story in the life of the Buddha. Professor B.R. Ambedkar, the father of Indian Constitution, he says the Buddha left the family and went because these wars were going on in the surrounding areas. More so on the side of his maternal and paternal parents, relatives. Water was a very scarce commodity, even now in India, in the borders of Nepal, in that area. So the relatives from the Sakya side, the Buddha's father's side, and the Kolya side, they were always at war for that little water, the river. I was there last November to look at that Rohini river in Nepal. And they were quarreling for this water. As the heir to the throne, Prince Siddhartha, tried to compromise with these two parties, his relatives, and they couldn't. So it says, according to certain Buddhist texts, he was frustrated and went to find his own peace. But after some time, after being enlightened, he came again to them, who were getting prepared to war with all the weapons. Then he questioned them. My dear brethren, we are all relatives. Blood is thicker than water. What do you value more? The water of this river or your own blood? As he said this, all the weapons came down. So this is conflict resolution at its best. One word, one sentence, one question which is relevant to the point can bring the tremendous change and bring a transformation that you turn your weapons into plowshares. After all, this was all agrarian society. You transform your anger into love. When you cannot love yourself, when you hate people, you're always at war. When you hate your own people, you are more on war, whether you are this side or that side. First of all, the Buddhist system is love yourself. He who loves himself does not hate another. Because the moment you hate another person or country or race or religion, you have polluted yourself. So these are the fundamental means that you can use to gain to that highest form of compassion and highest form of friendliness, metta, loving kindness. So therefore, the Buddha gives the alternative, how we can transform ourselves by using this greatest force on earth, the force of love. And he says, no wars can be settled through wars. No conflict can be resolved by another conflict, only by love, only by understanding, only out of compassion, by good negotiations only. About loss and gain, I want to take another interesting part, which is found in the life of the Buddha. His main chief disciple, Venerable Sariputta, and the monks were offered alms. Alms means in Buddhist terms, offering of food to gain merits, and also to the noble ones. Convention monks come to accept. And when you give to the noble ones, from the time of the Buddha until the end of the world, your results become great because the noble ones are incalculable. They are the incomparable field of merits where you do your good. So a noble lady has invited the monks to the house. But before she could start serving the monks and the Venerable Sariputta, the chief disciple of the Buddha, she received an emergency letter. And in that was a message, a note saying that her husband and all her sons who went to settle a dispute were killed. She calmly kept the note in her purse, in the pouch, and kept it away. She came to offer and take care of the monks to create merits, good deeds. She gave priority for that. She behaved as though everything is normal, and she was just waiting there for the maid to come. The maid was carrying a pot. Venerable Sariputta consoled the noble lady, thinking that she is feeling sorry about it. He said, all breakable things are bound to break. Then the lady remarked, you know what she said? What is this small loss, Venerable Sir? I have received news of the killing of my husband and sons. It's a bigger loss. I kept on serving you all with this dana despite my loss. She was praised by the Venerable Sariputta. In the time of crisis, have courage. That is the wise wisdom given by the Indian scriptures. Also, there are instances when the Buddha and the monks were invited for 3 months retreat where the devotees take care, the monks and the Buddha, in a village called Veranja. The Satan found in Buddhism is called Mara, and Mara intervened in the village people's mind and body, and he made it such that the Buddha and his disciples don't receive food for 3 months. So the Buddha and his disciples, the Buddhist monks at that time, they had to rely on eating horse feed, certain kind of grain that given to horses at that time for 3 months. So Mara came to him, appeared to the Buddha. He used to challenge the Buddha every now and then and ask him, Gautama Buddha, are you hungry? Then the Buddha's humorous reply was this. He says, we are feeders of joy. Piti Bhakka Bhavissama. Feeders of joy are a type of divine beings living in a realm called the radiant realm, Abhasara. In that radiant realm, they don't eat food. They live on joy. Buddhist humility is clearly seen, and the Buddha's way of expressing, having been invited in this retreat by the Brahmins who forgot to serve him and the Sangha for 3 months. By being contented, such great example he has shown. And the Sariputta also learned from the lady's story, his chief disciple. And when you come to the third, his second chief disciple, Moggalla, he wanted to intervene and use his psychic power. He was the preeminent psychic monk after the Buddha, who had powers to do wonders and miracles. He wanted to create food by his psychic powers. But the Buddha said, no, let us use our human nature and show to the world that it's important to tolerate such situations and how we can manage. But later on, after some time, the Buddha had prohibited monks to perform miracles because he was not interested in cheap publicity. So loss and gain, we have to understand and tackle the way as it comes and not to be shaken, to develop the unshaken mind. Praise and blame, fame and defame, we will take this together. Look at your social media and society and newspapers and the publicity that goes. Today, there's a lot of fake news, isn't it? And the social media thrives on this too, praise and blame. Whether you're an artist, politician, or in high society, or an academic, or a doctor, or a religious practitioner, nobody is spared. Sometimes you have blame out of professional jealousy in the working place. Professional jealousy is in every profession actually, even in the profession of monkhood. This is human nature. What more, even the Buddha has been blamed. He was blamed because he ordained men and women. And he said by doing so, Buddha was obstructing the progress of the country. That the Buddha was a Venaiko, a very destructive person who destroys society, the family life, the marriage institution. And because of him, we have less people in the world. So it's like that. The higher you climb the hill, the smaller you become in the eyes of jealous enemies. The winnowing fan ejects the husk but retains the grains. The strainer retains the gross remnants but drains out the sweet juice. So this is how we have to handle the situation. Fame and defame inevitably confronts us in our daily life. Fame we welcome, defame we dislike. Even insignificant publicity, some people like. Very little thing also is great for them. Bribery or corruption, or even religious ceremonies, undue publicity is sometimes expected. Charity shops, we see in the United Kingdom also. Charity is big business. Religion is also big business, and so is the competition in the world. To become enlightened and arahant, the ego of traditionalists who claim that they are arahants, they are enlightened, they have got jhanas. Publicity over purity. They are not interested in the practice and to become pure and to be human. They rather want to become higher psychics and have this publicity. This is found among our Buddhist elders also today, very badly at home in Sri Lanka. If fame comes naturally, that is okay, let it come. The Buddha called himself Anuttaro, the incomparable one in the world. He was not proud about it. He just said a matter of fact. Remember, bees are attracted to flowers for honey. Flowers do not invite bees. The noble and the sublime creative intelligence of mudita, a third noble quality after metta karuna, appreciative joy in English, is not so common among many of our people because the jealousy is much more. So because of tremendous jealousy, defame becomes the norm. And nobody is exempted, as I mentioned earlier. So somebody might say, he's very good, he's okay, blah, blah, blah. But then they'll say, but. That philosophy of always using but is there. There were rumors against the Buddha also. It's like that human nature. But then we have to see, to live life to the fullest, to understand things in a more happy way, we have to recognize the situation. So, the Buddha's way of explaining to us is very interesting. We go on to improve our lot, to get rid of all those negativities and go to something higher than the positive, to the form of equanimity. So, you get to the other part of it now, happiness and suffering. Among the worldly conditions, what the Buddha says is this: these 8 worldly conditions, O monks, keep the world turning around, and the world turns around these 8 worldly conditions as well. Loss and gain, fame and defame, praise and blame, happiness and suffering, pleasure or pain. By both the lay and the ordained, as long as they are not enlightened, and the uninstructed worldlings, he or she, if he doesn't reflect, these things subject to change. The Buddha says, he or she does not know it as it really is, and when it come upon loss, fame, defame, and so on, they don't reflect that these are not permanent, bound by suffering, then they suffer. When they gain, they become elated. But when they meet the loss, they are dejected. When you experience pleasure, you are elated. When you experience suffering, you are dejected. When you experience pleasure, you are elated. Involved in likes and dislikes, you will not be free from birth, being born, getting old, aging, death, from sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. In short, you will not be free from suffering. You may spend all your time, money, energy, and skill to gain happiness by pleasing unlimited desires and unsatiable desires by means of this limited space and time. This leads to dissatisfaction. That is what we call suffering, dukkha. Suffering, so are the positive and the negative in different things. The Buddha's middle way is not even to worry too much of happiness. Just be in the middle. Accept things as they come. Not the superficial pleasure. Practice equanimity. The real happiness is beyond pain and pleasure. And the highest form of happiness is Nibbana. In Nibbana, there is no person feeling. So it is happiness without feelings in the material sense. Spiritual real happiness, not just physical happiness, but the real total kind of happiness of mind and body and spirit. And you come to that point, you are unshaken. And if you develop yourself, you become the opposite. You understand that all these things change. Observant of their alteration, pleasant things do not stir your mind, and those unpleasant will not stay or disturb you. All likes and dislikes are dispelled by such a person. Eliminated and abolished, aware of the stainless, griefless state, he fully knows, having gone beyond. This is called the unshaken mind. Let me come to my ending part of my talk today. When we consider these 8 vicissitudes, we need to keep the balance ourselves. Come what may, I'm not going to give up my program to become a good person, to become an enlightened person, to pass in my exam, to succeed in my business. If I fail today, I will pass tomorrow. If I don't gain today and lose today, I may gain tomorrow. There is always a morrow to come. But remember, it's always, it's now or never. Do it as fast as possible and achieve the point of things that you want to grow. Be like a lion that trembles not at sounds. Be like the wind that does not cling to the meshes of a net. Be like the lotus that is not contaminated in the mud from which it springs up. Like the lotus, lead a blameless life. So the Buddha, in praise or blame, he says, the wise do not exhibit either elation or depression. There is none in this world who is not blamed, as you find in the Dhammapada. Very interesting, the Buddha says, how those who speak less are also blamed, how those who do not speak are also blamed, how those who talk with measured speaking also are blamed. That is the world nature. Before I come to the end of my talk, I want to quote a story from Socrates. Socrates was always blamed by his wife because Socrates lived in the time when Greece was prosperous and people were normally meeting in the markets and talking. He went to the place called the Forum. The Forum in Greek language is the market. And that's the place where he could meet many people. Men and women all went to the market to sell or to buy. So whenever he left his home, his wife will scold him that he is going out to help people. One day, something different happened. She did not scold him. She couldn't scold him at all because, for a simple fact, she fell ill and she was not strong enough to scold her like the other days, so she kept quiet. She was badly taken by her sickness. On that day, Socrates left his home with a very sad face. And when he came to the market, he met his friends and they said, "Sir, today you look very different. You look rather passive and in a pensive mood. You don't seem to look happy. You look sad. What is the reason?" Then Socrates said, "I am sad today because my wife did not scold me." Then they said, "Then you should be happy. You ought to be happy." No. Other days when she scolded me, I used that time to practice patience, to use tolerance. And today she didn't do that. I couldn't practice my patience. I couldn't practice my tolerance. So I feel sad. You see, how a great person like him, he lived in the time of the Buddha, 5th century AD, before the birth of Christ, 600 years. So he also came out with that noble idea. Use that opportunity of blame, transform that as an opportunity to practice tolerance, to practice patience. So he said, I missed the scolding, so today I am sad, and that is why I have a sad face. So the solution is not just simply responding to a blame. The solution is not mere tolerance. For Socrates, it was okay. But mere fighting, mere going to the conflict, and engaging in debate ends nowhere. So tolerance is a better option. But the best option is to look at all the things as a whole, being worldly conditions. If you are caught up in the world very badly, then you feel very sorry. But if you are practicing some sort of detachment, even from a secular point of view, not necessarily religious, well, it's part of the world story. This is part of life. This is a condition that everybody has to face. And this is what is called the highest form of living. This is called equanimity, upekha. Upekha is not apeksha. Apeksha is wanting. You want more and more. Upekha, no, you just accept what is there and understand the situation. And if you have equanimity, you are an egalitarian person. You think in terms of equality of everybody. You think in terms of equity. You think in terms of equilibrium psychologically and scientifically, and you become a very enlightened person who has balanced serenity. And this is what the Buddha says, Brahmametang viharang idamahu. This noble qualities means bringing heaven down to earth. You can make life a divine thing. The gods, the creator is not important. Divinity is important. The divine qualities are important. So brothers and sisters, as we go on and understand the world as it is and face our situations with courage, we may get that equanimity and we are one step to the highest form of happiness, Nibbana. Save Nibbana Santike. May all of you practice in your life day to day to face these 8 worldly conditions of life or of the world and overcome the burdens and be very realistic in your understanding and be well and happy. Sadhu.
Thank you very much, Most Venerable Dr. Sir Sumanasiri Nayaka Hamuduro, for giving us a very meaningful understanding about the 8 vicissitudes Ashtaloka Dharma, Buddha has given few examples how one should develop the mind. Among them, patience, being calm, understanding the reality, help us to maintain a very happy, peaceful life in this very life and also life after. Just imagine, as our Bhantes mentioned both in Sinhala and English, lot of details. When we have different situation in our life, even the brain can't sometimes process those things. All these biological organs are the same. The ultimate thing what brain can do is to close itself. That's what we call coma. So the brain even stops. We normally call kind of a fuse board. When there is a shock, these things can stop. So therefore, when we experience up and downs in our life, which is possible, which is how it is, it shocks us. It makes us sometimes happy, sometimes very sad. If one can maintain a balance in the mind, that is being described in the Mangala Sutta, Puttassa loka dhammehi chittang yassana kampati. When we encounter these 8 vicissitudes of life, if one can maintain a mind unshaken, that person lives peacefully and makes more meaningful things in life. And Buddha encourages us to always at that times, those are not just similes, those are helpful things for us to relate at that time. So when we go through similar situation, he encourages us to think of the ocean, the water in the ocean. People put everything onto it, but the ocean doesn't react. But modern days, some people say that even the great ocean was disappointed and overwhelmed, lost its own limit of patience. That is why we had the tsunami, because people were over-polluting the nature. But the great example given by the Lord Buddha, in the ocean, people make use of many things, nuclear weapons, underground oil, big ships, everything is being tolerated by the great ocean. And it says that we need to cultivate our mind in the same manner. Another example that we need to relate in when those things goes in, the difficult situations goes in our lives, great earth. People do everything to the great earth. This Mother Earth have great patience. I'm not going to take a lot of time, as our Bhantes mentioned almost everything. I will give you a very practical story I heard. Once there was a gentleman, he was expecting to go for a business. And he called for a taxi. taxi person came very on time. He was very grateful. He got into the taxi. The taxi person the driver was very charming, very calm, very happy, very respectful. And he was taking him into the place where he wanted to go. In the middle, he even went into the pleasant chat to make them feel both comfortable. In the middle of the journey, a vehicle came from the side road where they were in the main road. The person who came from the side road did not care anything, don't want to give any right way, straight away came to the main road. The taxi driver put lots of effort to make a very dangerous, life-taking accident stops, and he managed to stop the vehicle, did not cause into an accident. He was still calm, and the person who did not look around came straight to the main street, main road, came out of the car, start abusing, shouting, making lots of complaining. The taxi driver remained very calm, listening to him. Once he calms down, that person went back to his own car and drive away. The passenger was shocked to see this. Asked the taxi driver, "That was not your fault. That person came into your way without looking at all. And he even came out of the car and abused you, said every word. How could you? Are you a saint? Are you a monk? How could you did not react and become very patient?" Then this taxi driver said, "Sir, I have been doing this job for many years. I have seen and met many people in my car and around. That gives me great understanding about human nature. What I see is many people are like bin collection people. They have a lot of rubbish in their lives. They are waiting for everywhere to dump them because they are exhausted, they are lost, desperate, lots of suffering going through in them. They can dump their junk, rubbish, but we don't have to do the same thing because we don't have them. So that was a great lesson. And another story, there was a elderly lady living in a house. She called a taxi. Taxi person came. It was a very quiet house. Nobody is there. And the person thought he has come to the wrong address. And then knocked at the door. The lady opened the door and said that she wanted to go for a nursing home as she leaving the house. Nobody there to help. The taxi driver took her suitcase and she said that I would like to see the places where I grew up. The taxi driver took her into the street where she grew up, and then where she went for pleasure, even for dancing, and many places passed by. And it came a bit late and dark. The lady said, "Now it is good.
for us to go back to the place where I am going to spend my rest of the days. And this lady said, when the taxi driver dropped her at the place, I had a great life. I met a lot of people. But the time has come me to now step into a more peaceful place. I am stepping in without any regrets, because when I was at that moment in every situation, I try to be good and make the most. So there is nothing to regret in the past, nothing to worry about in the future. And the taxi driver felt very emotional. And they were eventually wanted to say goodbye, but it was very short meeting. And the lady offered some expenses for the journey. And this taxi driver said, "Thank you, madam. I would not expect any material things from you at this moment. I still have other customers. But accept this as my contribution for your humble humanity." So loss and gain, praise and blame, fame and defame, sadness and happiness, we can't live without them. Those are part of our life. What Buddha mentioned, not to change them. You can't change them, because you destroy yourself if you try to do that. What you should do, change how you relate into it, is the most important thing. Otherwise you can't. If I say an example, what I try to say, ocean means waves. You can't change the waves of the ocean. If you try, then you make a big danger, or even lose your life, rather making that happen. What you can do to learn how to surf. So all these vicissitudes in life is common, without which there is no life. But what Buddha mentioned, Puttassa loka dhammehi cittang yassana kampati, a cittang, you need to develop an understanding mind that you can maintain calmness, equilibrium, equanimity through understanding. How? These things, as our Venerable Bhantes mentioned, we quite okay when we get the gain. We are okay when we get the fame. We are okay when we get the praise. We are okay when we have the happiness. But we reject, we deny, we don't want the loss. We don't want the blame. We don't want the defame, neither the suffering. That is what means want. Our likeness is the problem. How that comes? Because we have this nature called Atma, selfish nature, or me, myself, mine. We are sad of losing our loved ones, but we are okay when we think of our neighbors' parents are no longer with them. When someone dies in our country or our nearby village, is okay, but it has come to our household, then it is a problem. Because of that deep relationship attachment. And that is where we need to develop, and in fact, those factors are Lokottara Dharma, according to the discourse on blessing, that we can go beyond our material world understanding into more peaceful nature. No, I would not take that much time now. I will pass on to our Dr. Ajit De Silva to take into the question and answers about the subject today, Dhamma discussion, based on the Dhamma talks delivered by our Hamuduro, both in Sinhala and English. May I take these blessings, even after this we will transfer merits, to remember the late Justice Dhira Ratna, beloved father of Dr. Ruvini Senasinghe, passed away 3 years ago, and also Mr. Stanley Senasinghe, beloved father of Dr. Nimal Senasinghe, who passed away 4 years ago. And also, may I take this opportunity to think of Mrs. Vinita, who is in United States at the moment, joining with us. She cared for her parents very heartfully, and now feeling very much a kind of a vacuum in her life of their loss. May I take these blessings for Mrs. Vinita and also Mrs. Srini De Silva to have all the blessings and merits to transfer into their good names, and may they all be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, all three Bhantes. What a wonderful and eloquent, beneficial talk from all three Bhantes, giving us not only the principles involved in the Buddhist technical points, but also very practical examples of how we deal with the 8 vicissitudes or the worldly winds of life. So time for questions. Please, would you, as we have done before, send your questions through the chat line, or please speak up, as we are not that much of a huge crowd. So please do either way. Hopefully we'll get some interest from some of our young people. You can indicate by raising your hand on the bottom of your screen. Perhaps initially, Arosha, may be worth unmuting everybody for a brief period. So if they can, okay, you can unmute yourself on the screen by using the mute button. And we await your questions, particularly from the our younger participants. So while we are waiting for a question, Bhante, I would like to see from my own perspective, if I understood the discussion, the Dhamma so far, when you have someone who is extremely close to you, like a parent, and of course, you know, you when a parent, unfortunately, as we all have to do, departs, you know, there is the loss, and there's also the sadness. It's probably, if I understand it correctly, not right to say that you shouldn't have a close love or relationship with a parent. Of course you do. But in dealing with the loss, how would you say that the relationship has to be seen from a different point of view? Is it to say that, say I have a very elderly mother, and she's 96, and so if at a time when she passes away, I'm in a way preparing myself, is it correct for me to say that I should try to achieve equanimity towards and I think the sadness and the pain comes from how closely you are connected. You feel you are connected with your parent. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Parents, mothers and fathers are not others. They are yourself. It's only natural that you must feel sad. You cannot put a deceiving way of looking at it and cheat yourself and saying, I'm not sad. If you feel like crying, you should cry. You are not enlightened. You have sadness. You have grief. You know what is lamentation. And why only at the time of death that you shouldn't feel sad? If somebody is sick, your parents or your near and dears, you need to feel sad. It's not against Buddhism. But you have to understand this is part of nature, the second point. And this is part of life. As we come, so we go. Your sadness, your tears cannot help the person to bring back his or her life. So this is the natural way. All things that arise, as I have also mentioned in my talk, must cease to operate. And when we understand this nature, that is why these teachings of the Dhamma is not only for the monks, for everybody. Marananusati, the recollection of death, to understand that we'll all die one day. If we understand that all of us will die one day, we don't quarrel. The mindfulness of understanding death helps people not to have war, conflict. After all, we are going to die one day, so why we fight? You understand? So it's a great positivity in the Dhamma. Death is not to be resigned, accepted. And if you accept that, you don't resign to death. It's not only your mother who has died or father. Everybody's mothers and fathers also die. So this is the natural law. A thing has come, we didn't invite them to come to this world, they came. They didn't invite you to come and you came. They have gone and one day you will also be gone. So if you understand this nature, you don't over cry. You don't over feel sad. You must feel sad basically as a human being. After all, you are human. And if you feel like crying, cry. Why do you want to just keep it up on your chest? It can be bad because it can give you a great depression later. So Buddhism being the middle way, when you are happy, don't be over elated and overjoyed and be proud. And when you are sad, don't be over sad and damage your health and yourself. Keep the balance. Equanimity means balanced serenity, not mere equilibrium as in science, not just equity as in land law, not just to become egalitarian in political life. To see that things can be balanced well.
Thank you. So would you also say that it's another way of dealing with things like situations like that is to always expect things to change? It is because we hold that things are going to stay the same as they are right now.
That's the first reality I mentioned in my talk also. If you understand that things are all subject to change, you don't worry so much. You don't cry so much. You sigh no more. That understanding of the first reality that everything changes helps one to look into every situation that has changed. When death comes, life is not permanent. When loss comes, wealth is not permanent as well.
And the Kisa Gautami, story of Kisa Gautami, and Buddha could have reached her alone. She could, what Buddha used is a very different technique. It's wonderful. Ask her to go and find out if there are a household that no one has died. So that means there was another monk, he was giving a talk, and one lady stood up and said, "You gave a wonderful talk, but I lost my husband. I am very sad, and I have been like this for now 2 years. Is there any other way that you can help me to cope with this situation?" So this monk, very good speaker, paused his speech. He couldn't talk. And he turned to the audience and said to the audience, look, this lady is suffering for 2 years because of this very difficult situation. I would like you to stand if any one of you here have the same situation. Out of 3,000 audience, nearly 2,500 stood, and they had the similar or near sadness or difficult situation. By looking at that she is not alone, this is the point. By looking at that she is not alone, and it is not only for her, she managed to come out of this suffering. So this is the suffering normally comes when you try to think it's only me. Why it is me? It is because it is, if it is me, that is the problem. If you think it is universal, it is common. You know, that we can preach, even if I say personal experience in my life. I have been to many funerals. I have met a lot of people who lost their mothers. But when it comes to my mother, it has been completely different. So therefore, we all are human beings, that we go into an extent, but being a monk, I could say personally in my experience, it helps me enormously. That means you don't all have to be a monk to deal with this, but at least be attending into these practices, listening to these teachings, being somewhat spiritual environment helps. And many people go into bad things, maybe alcohol, wrong relationships, other very dangerous things to cope with difficult situations. But when you are in a spiritual environment or doing some charitable good work, you are in a win-win situation, as our Hamdru mentioned. So I think engaging yourself into kusal, developing wholesome deeds, understanding it is not a personal thing, it is common to everyone. This is a universal truth that helps to alleviate the grief and suffering and also the pain of losing a great part of your life. Thank you, Ajit Mahathya.
Thank you, Hamdurne. I have had a message from Mrs. Vinita Vitanachi from Florida. She's ever so grateful for Hamdru for mentioning about her parents, and she's also very thankful that she has been able to participate in, as she says, 3 very insightful sermons over the last 3 weeks. So we are still waiting for any more questions. I can't see any message in the chat of any questions. Anyone else, if you like to, please unmute your phone and put forward the question. Everyone is a little shy to speak up, so we will go ahead with Anumodanava.
So we will close our program by sharing the merits. Today, as usual on Sunday evening, we are very lucky to have this Daham Sisila program to share the teachings of the Buddha and also to bring a lot of blessings to our community, to improve the understanding of the teachings of the Buddha and to make them use for the benefit of their life. Therefore, it is a very special, meritorious activity. Meritorious activities are very helpful if we do not have enough merits in our life, that we are very much going into these difficult times in our life. Merits makes our life convenient, comfortable. That is why Buddha mentioned us to kusalassa upasampada. So like a very energetic person goes to the forest, collect different flowers and sort them out in different colors, different sizes. He or she makes nice garlands. We need to make ourselves all the time merits, wholesome deeds to make our life more successful, more happy. When we have that in our life, it gives us the ability and strength to go through the fluctuations in our life. Life is supposed to go up and down, loss and gain, and praise and blame. Sometimes we do so many things to other people, but they make us disappointed. Sometimes some people do things and it breaks our heart. Why it happens? Because we had some expectations. Buddha always asks us to do things for doing sake. Expectations can bring the disappointments and sadnesses. Therefore, that is what makes wholesome deeds. You are doing good things without having expectations, but even though we have expectation or no expectation, every action has a consequence. Every action has a result. We can't deny the results. Results is a natural thing that comes to us once we perform our duties. So today, this program is being sponsored by Dr. Ruvini Senasinghe and the family, as they usually host a Dana ceremony, but they can't do this due to the climate of the current situation. They wanted to host and support in this good cause by sharing the teachings of the Buddha Dhamma. And that is supposed to be the highest giving, Dhamma Dana. And they wanted to share the merits with their late father, Justice Dhira Ratna, who passed away 3 years ago. Also, beloved father of Dr. Nimal Senasinghe, Mr. Stanley Senasinghe, who passed away 4 years ago, and all other relatives and friends in their family. They want to share the merits with them. Also, we would like to think of Mrs. Vinita, Mrs. Rini De Silva, and all other members of the community who greatly think of their loved ones. May the merits that we acquired through listening to the teachings of the Buddha, observing the precepts, and sometimes contemplating on it, made some meditational merits, bhavanamaya pina, and being with us, or sponsoring, doing many things. May all the merits we acquired be with those we mention by names. Even though we do not mention by names, may they all be with all the departed relatives and friends. And also we need to mention our venerable monks, our venerable Seelasumana Panditha Hamduro, may his parents, teachers, and anyone who are no longer with in his family, may they all equally share these merits. Also our Dr. Reverend Sumanasiri Hamduro, may those merits be with his parents, teachers, and all the relatives and friends in his life. May they equally rejoice in these merits. And also all the people, especially as Dr. Rubinin Senasinghe want to mention, those who passed away due to this coronavirus, COVID-19, we share the merits to their good names across the globe, around the world. So many people lost their lives. May they equally share our merits, and may they find the peace and happiness in their journey. Bearing that in our heart, thinking all your loved ones, all your departed ones, let us take our hearts and minds together to transfer the merits to our departed relatives and friends. Let us recite the Gatha together to transfer the merits. Idang me ñāti nang hotu sukita hontu ñātayo. Idang me ñāti nang hotu sukita hontu ñātayo. Idang me ñāti nang hotu sukita hontu ñātayo. Also may the Devas rejoice in our merits and return their blessings, especially for the Buddhist temple. At this very difficult time, we try to do our best to bring these powerful blessings into the lives, which are going to make completely different. We have never experienced similar situation in our lifetimes. Everything has changed. So therefore, may the blessings of noble celestial beings, Samma Dittika Devivaru, protect you from all around, from the temple, the monks, and all the community. May the blessings of Devas be with you all for good health, protection, and happiness. May the Devas, celestial beings, rejoice in our good and share these merits, and may they also liberate from all difficulties and suffering, attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Bearing this in our hearts, let us share our merits with Devas together. Akasatta ca bhummatta deva naga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chiran raktantu sasanang. Akasatta ca bhummatta deva naga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkantu desanang. Akasatta ca bhummatta deva naga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkantu mang paranti. And finally, may those merits bring us the understanding of Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. May those have the blessings for us to practice the middle path and understand the cause and effect theory, understand the three universal characteristics, anitya, dukkha, anatma, impermanent, unsatisfactoriness, and selfless nature, through which may those merits be a great perfection for all of us to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana, which is to free from all these suffering, all these vicissitudes in life, and attain the balance, liberation, and the free from suffering in this very life to us and to our loved ones. Bearing this in our hearts, please bring your palms together. Venerable monks would like to give a short blessing to finish the program for the day. Yandun nimittang avamangalancha yocha manapo sakunassa saddho papaggaho dussupinan akantang buddhanubhavena vinasamentu. Yandun nimittang avamangalancha yocha manapo sakunassa saddho papaggaho dussupinan atantang dhammanubhavena vinasamentu. Yandun nimittang avamangalancha yocha manapo sakunassa saddho papaggaho dussupinan akantang sanghanubhavena vinasamentu. Sabbitiyo vivajjantu sabbarogo vinassatu mate bhavattvantarayo sukhi digayuko bhava. Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakkantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sada sotti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakkantu sabba devata sabba dhammanubhavena sada sotti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakkantu sabba devata sabba dhammanubhavena sada sotti bhavantu te. Abhivadana silissa niccang vaddhapachayino Chattaro dhamma vaddanti ayuvanno sukhang balam ayurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha ato nibbana sampatti iminate samijjatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
එහෙනම් අපි හැමදෙනාම ස්වාමීන් වහන්සේලාට පුණ්‍යානුමෝදනාවයි සමාධිපේන ගාථාව කියලා වන්දනා කරමු.
Sorry Arosha, මම මේ කතා කරා පොඩ්ඩක් මේ බටන් එක දාලා තිබුණේ මේ තව පාරක් කියන්නම්. සාදු 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 බොහොම අපූර්ව ධර්ම දේශනාවක්. මම වැදගත් කාරණාවක් තව මතක් කරන්න අවශ්‍යතාවයක් තියෙනවා. එන ඉරිදාට තියෙන වැඩසටහනේ ධර්ම දේශනාව බොහොම මේ වැදගත් සහ අපූර්ව මේ වගේ මාතෘකාවක් අපි යොදාගෙන තියෙනවා. එනමුත් අපිට කවුරුවක්වත් දැන්ට ලැබිලා නැහැ. ඒක දායකත්වය ලබාගෙන නැහැ කවුරුත්. ඒක මේ අසන අයගෙන් කවුරු හරි කැමති කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා නම් අපිට ඒක කරුණාකරලා දන්වන්න. එතකොට එහෙමනම් අපි ස්වාමීන් වහන්සේලාට මේ වන්දන ගාථාව කියලා උන්වහන්සේලාට අපේ নমස්කාරය දක්වමු. ඕකාස වන්ධාමි බන්තේ
මයා
කතං පුඤ්ඤං සාමිනා අනුමෝදිතබ්බං සාමිනා කතං පුඤ්ඤං මයිහං දාතබ්බං සාදු 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 ඕකාස ద్వාරත්තේන කතං සබ්බං අච්චයං කමතමේ භන්තේ ඕකාස කමාමි භන්තේ ဒုတိယံ පි ඕකාස කමාමි භන්තේ තතියම්පි ඕකාස කමාමි භන්තේ සාදු 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 හොඳයි එන සුමානේ එන ඊට දත් හම්බ වෙනකම් ඔබ සියලු දෙනාටම සම්මා සම්බුදු සරණයි